Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to your EPL Index Transfer Roundup for the day. I'm Dave Davis. It's Wednesday, the 22nd of May, and ladies and gentlemen, it's ramping up, isn't it? It really started to come towards the start of the transfer season. There's that little weird bit, isn't there, before the Euros, before the Copa Americas. So there's a lot of rumours for players, and not just players, because the manager merry-go-round continues. So naturally, the breaking news yesterday, unless you've been living under a rock and you missed it, I'm sure you've seen, Mauricio Pochettino has left Chelsea by mutual consent, isn't it? So naturally, there's a lot of rumours now, where is his next club? Who will Chelsea look to replace him with? So let's get right into it now. Maybe an easy link, you could argue, but it's important to say the Standard has Manchester United and Bayern Munich on alert for Pochettino. Okay, both those clubs are apparently linked with him. Now, there's a lot of talk about Ten Hag. Bayern are on plan Z when it comes to their managers as well, aren't they? So there's a lot to wonder about there. At the same time, also the Chelsea role. Who's going to take that? The people will shout certain places. But the latest that Team Talk has is that the Stuttgart manager, remember, Stuttgart did really well in the Bundesliga, qualified for the Champions League. So Sebastian Hoeneß is a target, and also Kieran McKenna is a target. Now, the Ipswich boss, the former Manchester United assistant that came up there. Now, important to say, and how would I phrase this? Chelsea are very keen to put out the story, you can tell, because it's come through numerous media outlets that are looking for a young, progressive coach who's keen to work with young players, mainly because we know the club's an absolute mess and the manager's not going to be listened to. And you think we've had Tuchel, Potter, now Pochettino. So, yeah, Todd Bowley has got something to sort out there. Also, contenders for the Telegraph mentioned them because there's more going to come into the mix. The Girona boss, Michel, the one who's got them qualified for the Champions League, he'll be another one. And Enzo Maresca, the young coach who's got Leicester City promoted. The thing is, with that sort of Chelsea role, there'll be numerous rumours, won't there, for weeks and weeks? Well, depending on how quickly Chelsea make an appointment, but it's easy chip paper in that regard. Interestingly, Plettenberg did say, speaking of clubs that are trying to retain him, Thomas Tuchel held loose talks with Chelsea. However, it wasn't right for both parties. Funny that, isn't it? So, yeah, the Chelsea manager job, that will rumble. Let's move back to players a bit, and we'll move to the Manchester club. So, big one from Romano that went round yesterday, that Manchester City's goalkeeper, the Brazilian international Ederson, is open to offers, as are the club, for the player. And he's attracting a lot of interest, as was also mentioned for another Brazilian goalie in Alisson from Saudi Arabia. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the links to Saudi are ramping up again. You think we've seen quite a lot of Brazilians at the same time as well, older Brazilians. So Casemiro from United was linked regularly. Ederson's now become one link. There's Alisson stories brewing. So it very much seems like it's all kicking off again, shall we say, in the Saudi market. So one to keep an eye on. And speaking of United, there's a bit of varying talk on this. You need to be careful because the Mail says they're exploring the possibility of Mark Guehi, the Crystal Palace centre-back, plays on the left side, as an alternative, it's important to say, if they fail to strike a deal with Jared Branthwaite. So there's a couple of things at play here, and Everton obviously wanting big money for him. And it's important to say Everton want big money for him because there's quite a few stories around him yesterday. And probably the one I would take was from iSport. So they said that both Newcastle and Tottenham are also interested in the youngster, which isn't surprising. A left-footed English centre-back is going to be a high price. But according to a number of reports, really important to say, Everton have put the fee at £88 million. Now, Everton's financial struggles are well documented, aren't they? We all know about 777, and what's not happening is more important to say. And Bashiri trying to sell the club. So they are obviously trying to get top dollar. Just going back to United, though, it's interesting because they said that looking for Branthwaite, Gay is an alternative. I mean, both of those players are big money. But there was quite a few reports yesterday that because of their financial situation and FFP, PSR, whatever you want to call it, at play, that their budget without sales will be around the £35 million mark. There are quite a few stories around that. So it's interesting. However, there's one thing that sort of contradicts. There's a few others, and just to shout one out from Football Insider, said that they're in a position to spend big, but that's kind of contrary to all the others. So it will be interesting to see which one's right and which one's wrong. Obviously, we know Varane's off the wage bill, Martial's off the wage bill. But you think back to the summer when Ten Hag was really scratching the barrel, and Amrabat and whatever you think of his signings. Yeah, there's a financial question there to be asked. Couple of others to point out. TalkSport had a story, one that's come up before, but that Tottenham have an interest specifically in Dominic Solanke, the English international. 26 years old, isn't he? There was no talk about the actual amount involved, but Tottenham retain an interest. Also caught offside, I've mentioned a player from Benfica, the young Portuguese centre-back, Antonio Silva, who has got a lot of eyes. He's a Mendes client as well, funnily enough. But the three they name, three big English football names in Arsenal, United, and Liverpool, have made contact over a deal for the young Portuguese centre-half. Portugal did name their Euro squad yesterday. I don't know specifically if he is in it or he's got in it, the provisional squad, but yeah, very much a young talent. It will be no surprise to see him move to the Premier League. Arne Slot gets mentioned in a few places, so a few had this, but probably the one I'll call out is Give Me Sport. And you have to give me some leeway on the pronunciation, but a player that used to be at Feyenoord has now moved to Benfica, the Turkey international, Orkan Kuku, a midfielder who, again, it's a strange one because Slot played in midfield. Liverpool don't seem short of midfielders right now, do they? So maybe that's a bit of a tenuous link. And to be honest, it's not gone very well at Benfica. He's already had to apologise to the manager and his teammates for comments because he's not played regularly. So, yeah, I'm not sure on that one. Others to call out. So, Chelsea, they're homegrown. We know that they're open to offers around the likes of Conor Gallagher. There's a full expectation that Hutchinson, the youngster on loan at Ipswich, will either stay there or move to pastures new. And Trevor Chalobah, that's another name that keeps coming up now. HITC said that Tottenham have inquired about his availability and have also, again, asked about Conor Gallagher. So Spurs potentially looking to make a double raid on Chelsea's homegrown talents. Chalobah can obviously play anywhere across the back four. Gallagher, as we know, is an English midfielder. Will be interesting to see what brews there. That's one that will keep going. So other sort of wider afield, United and as Bayern Munich and a few others are watching young Swedish player, and again, I'll probably butcher this name, but Malik Junior Jalkui, who plays for Gothenburg. He's a talent that's liked by a lot of European teams. Some interesting ones. Villa are mentioned as well, so Villa fans keep abreast of this. Apparently, according to a few sources in Spain, they've lodged a bid of around, again, depending on how many euros you get at Tesco, about 12.8 million for Sevilla. Sevilla have got their issues, aren't they? 777 for the Argentinian defender Marcos Acuna. Now, obviously, there's talk with Villa and their FFP that they're willing to sell Diogo Carlos, their Brazilian centre-half, aren't they? Who's rumoured their top earner on over 100,000 a week. So that'll be interesting. So with the defenders in the mix, that Tutto Sport said that Villa are also interested in Raul Bellanova, who's been really impressive during his current time with Torino. But also they mentioned that West Ham and Manchester United are keen on the player as well. So yeah, it does seem like Villa are starting to make moves. So as we know about Ross Barkley at the same time. Other interesting ones to mention, Serhou Guirassy, the Stuttgart star. Now, there's still a lot of suggestions, but a bit of uncertainty that he has that £17.5 million release clause, which he is 28, but for a player who scored the goals that he scored, 28 Bundesliga goals, will be of interest. And now West Ham, according to the Standard, are taking a serious look at the player. Maybe interesting links there because obviously their sporting director, Tim Steiden, came from Leverkusen, didn't he, originally? So the German links are there, but it will be interesting to see what does happen with Guirassy if he does make the move to the Premier League. And we talked about Tottenham, we talked about Aston Villa shortly a while ago. So both those clubs, according to Calcio Mercato, are interested in Andrea Cambiasso. Now, 24 centre half. Juventus apparently value him around the 34, 35 million pound mark. So it will be interesting to see, obviously, Juventus and how they're operating at the moment if that happens. And the final one to really call out this morning, caught offside, say that Fulham and West Ham have held talks with Corinthians over the signing of their young forward, Wesley. So obviously there might be a few Brazilian youngsters in the market for various clubs and for various reasons. But those are the big highlights, realistically, people, that it's manager talk at the moment, isn't it? Thomas Tuchel, where will he go? The Pochettino story, Manchester United and Ten Hag's uncertainty, who's going to be the new Chelsea head coach, many, many things that way. There's other stories it's worth, kind of alluding to that are coming up as well, that Tottenham seem very much in the mix for a goal scorer, as do Arsenal. Arsenal linked with Ivan Toney in a few outlets, and Tottenham also linked with Santiago Gutierrez, around £42 million. The Mexican international who's currently playing at Feyenoord, who've naturally just lost their manager on a slot. So there's quite a few talks around that. But ladies and gents, transfer talks rounding up, ramping up, accelerating, whatever you want to call it. So that was the EPL Index Transfer Daily Roundup on Wednesday, the 22nd of May.